Hi everyone, welcome to another session of the Klagenfurt Critical Game Lab from the Alpen-Adria University. My name is Florian. I'm a student of Game Studies and Engineering, which is a master's program at the university. And like every Tuesday, we have moved our game labs online for everyone to see, and today I've picked a topic which is kind of very close to my heart because it's a game that I've been playing on and off for ages, which is Final Fantasy VII. I think the original one came out in 1997 or something, and since then I've probably played through it like 20 times or something. The game also did get like a few prequels and sequels, and there also was a movie. I think there were like 5 games released after the original one, 5 or 4, something like that, plus 1 movie which was called Advent Children. So the game itself has quite a huge universe, like in terms of media representation, and now Square Enix finally released a remake some years ago, some month ago, and I think it's been 23 years since the original game, and I don't know how long since they actually announced at least the possibility of the remake. I think they originally teased the remake for the PlayStation 3 as a tech demo already, and then it still took them ages to release the actual remake, and now we've got a remake that is supposedly split into a bunch of parts. Nobody knows how many, and the game that we're going to play is basically the first 2 or 3 hour chunks of the original game, which they've stretched into a about 40 or 50 hour game. And before we actually start with the actual remake, I'd just like to show you the intro scene of the original Final Fantasy, or at least the version that is available for PlayStation 4, which for that time had a very beautiful video intro. And we're going to look at that for a bit, and then I'm going to switch games, and then we'll see how for instance, this particular scene as well, which has stuck into the minds of everyone who has played Final Fantasy VII, has been remade. So let's just start with that for now. Has any one of you actually played Final Fantasy VII? I remember I was like around 10 years old when I first got that game, and these video sequences were just beautiful back in the day. Square, or as they call it now, Square Enix, were really some of the bigger producers of games that really tried to tease out as much as possible in terms of graphical potential, like what the PlayStation 1 could actually do. And you can usually see that in the amount of effort they put into those video sequences. this PlayStation 4 version actually has slightly upgraded HD versions, but I think it's still a very good representation of what the PlayStation 1 actually offered. I think I'm just going to play a tiny section of what's going on here, and then we switch. So we have some sort of common grounds for comparison. These three characters don't really get much attention in the original game, and I believe they actually changed that in the remake, trying to make them like more round. And here's just characters that essentially die off pretty quickly early in the game, so you don't get to know them much. Essentially the only reason Cloud is here is because he's paid for, so he's pretty much a mercenary, so he doesn't really care about the people. Or the group that he's hired for is called Avalanche, and they're actually trying to save the planet from this big Shinra corporation, but the only reason he's actually helping them is because he's being paid for it, so there's not much of a personal interest in any of this. So essentially Avalanche is a group that's trying to save the planet from the Shinra company, which is essentially using reactors to try to suck the life force out of the planet and turn it into, I think, electricity or whatever. And again, Cloud just not caring about this at all. This is one thing that is really annoying about this game. It's just these random battles that you just get showered with. I think I can actually turn up the battle speed somewhere if I'm not mistaken. Yes, I can. Otherwise this will be very slow. Alright, now we are back to a better looking version of the same game, I would say. So, have any of you been playing any remakes of games that they've been playing years ago and now gotten back to? Oh yes, Resident Evil 2 is I think Resident Evil 2 is a very beautiful example of how remakes should work. In preparation for this game, like, I actually tried to look at whether there's any sort of literature, like in game studies, that deals with remakes. I couldn't really find anything, so I'm sort of just I'm pretty much left on my own here, but I think Resident Evil 2 is a very good example of what a remake should be like. Resident Evil 2 is very good at sort of recreating what the original game wanted to achieve, how it was on an aesthetic level, and it just recreated all these mechanics, all the graphics, and especially the elements of horror on this new console, and I think it worked very well. There's also other examples of yes, Age of Empires 2 is something I've also played. I believe there was a version in, was it 2013 or something, and later they also released the definitive edition or something. That is really mostly a graphical update, and this is something I've really been wondering about. Like, for instance, there's games such as Crash Bandicoot or Spyro that more fall under the category of remastering something rather than remaking a game. If it's just a graphical update, I don't really feel like it's a remake, but then again, it really depends on the company, how it is being marketed. Sometimes there are remakes that are actually marketed as such, yet there are none. Maybe, for instance, if they're just graphical updates, for instance Dark Souls or something like that, games that just don't add anything new to the game, it's sort of weird, and yet you can't really do anything about it because it's just the company deciding to frame it as such. And yeah, Age of Empires definitely is an example where it isn't just anything better. So at least to me, it doesn't really matter, for instance, which version of Age of Empires I play. I mean, obviously the new versions might have some bug fixes or tweaks or run smoother, but there isn't anything interesting about them that makes me want to play them any longer than the original game. So this is actually quite an interesting take. Final Fantasy VII, I believe the directive for the storytelling and everything changed, and so it will actually be quite interesting to look at how closely Square Enix tried to stay to the original story. So let's just start and see how the intro scene plays out this time in comparison to the PlayStation 1 version. I have no idea about these difficulty setting. I'll just go with classic, whatever that means. I mean, yeah, I think the one thing about Age of Empires is that people keep using it because it's a multiplayer game and you can play it online with friends. So I guess if you're really into that online play, you're probably more welcoming to a upgraded version of things that offers you more in multiplayer or offers you something that is more aesthetically pleasing than the online game. So I think that's something different than like Final Fantasy as a single player game. I have played the demo of the remake, so pretty much I know as much as we played in the original game just now until the boss fight and then leaving the reactor again. That's as far as I've gotten so far, so otherwise beyond that I'm really blind. Yes, one crispy cookie. I already know that, but maybe we can just see how far we get about that. But as I already pointed out, the main director of the game has changed, and that also had an effect on the story on some certain levels. And this is also, if you just boil it down to how much this game offers, this is about apparently 40 to 50 hours to finish, and it's really just the story around until the point where you leave Midgard. And in the original Final Fantasy game, that's around 3 hours. So there must be a lot of padding in between what they put in. So a lot of side stories, maybe a lot of things where you can interact more better with the side characters. I think this is about where the original intro left off, but you can already see a slight deviation here. Yes, I mean, essentially for me, I'm trying to not spoil too much here. I have already spoiled myself the whole story until the end, and yes, there are some major things that are being changed, but currently we don't know what any of this means. It's essentially there's just a lot of YouTubers speculating about what is going on and how they interpret the story. There definitely are some deviations from how the original game plays out, but you can't really tell how it's going to move forward from there. Maybe it'll just move into the normal storyline, or maybe it'll move into something else. It's really hard to tell because you don't have any ground to go on other than the speculation from the fan base. do they have to do the right what they want to do with a remake? I think that's a very difficult question. I mean, on the one hand, they are selling it as a remake, so I kind of would expect them to just remake the game in a, you know, aesthetically spiffed up fashion. But then again, they're a company who wants to make money, and I think that really plays into that. And that makes it really hard because they also have to deal with investors and such, and that doesn't make it easier. I mean, so far there is very little deviation, so at least from the gameplay we've seen in comparison to the original. But in a way, you could think about a game that has been played and circulated by a community for 23 years. There is quite a lot of emotional attachment by the people to this. I mean, there's probably also a level of nostalgia going on. And I think there's, depending on whether you grew up with the game or whether you just picked it up later, when the game was available on other consoles or whatever, I think that's the difference. How these people perceive it. I think that, at least for someone like me who actually grew up with the game, I'm almost heartbroken about the fact that I know that there are going to be changes. But that's just because I'm approaching this game with a lot of expectations. I'm just looking at the title and it says remake, so I'm expecting it to be a remake, but others that just picked up the game along the way as they grew older might just have a different perception on it and just take it for whatever it is.
Halt! Who goes there?
You're up.
So this intro scene is pretty much still close to the original. Barrett just runs away and leaves me to fighting these soldiers.
You're coming with us. Nice and easy.
Don't think so.
But as you can see, this obviously the battle system has switched from an active time battle, as they called it, to just really pretty much a button measure.
Who in the hell? Hands where I can see them.
Have fun.
Freeze! Move and we shoot.
Go ahead. Enough of this.
He can use magic?
That it?
So, in comparison to the original, obviously, it's now proper 3D, and you just have so much more to look at, and you actually get to soak in the atmosphere much better. You can actually see that this is just a regular train station. You've got the boards telling you the boarding times and things like that. There's posters with advertisements, so there actually is quite a lot more to look at than just these pre-rendered backgrounds that we had before.
Drop the weapon!
You got this.
Yeah, what'd he say?
Yes, it is very much closer to Final Fantasy with a combat system. That is very true. And initially I thought this simply had to do with them recycling code, but I looked at it and they actually switched engines. Final Fantasy XV was in a different engine than this one. This remake is in Unreal Engine. So I'm mostly assuming that they're just trying to take the approach that role-playing games nowadays have more action-based combat anyway, and they just try to fit it into the existing aesthetics of Final Fantasy. But in a way, it really feels like a an adaptation of the Final Fantasy XV combat system to the original active time battle. Essentially, it's like the Final Fantasy XV combat system without all the teleporting going on. I think the clear article is supposed to be a reference to the northern crater, where the game sort of culminates in the end. Yes, that's true. Like things like counter time battle or active time battle really weren't really contributing to a sort of gameplay loop or gameplay flow, because there's so many buttons you have to press while menus pop up, and it really slows the game down. But I mean, that probably also had to do with the limitations of the console, so in a way this is really just maybe an improvement on what the original console simply couldn't do in this way. And here we're back at the gate in front of the reactor. It's just that now you can actually look upwards and marvel at the size of the thing and how it just essentially exhales the planet's life.
So what's Soldier Boy's deal? Is he one of us now? He's got balls, this, what was his name again?
Cloud Strife.
Right.
And he isn't a soldier anymore. Still, he's a professional, unlike the rest of us. I'm glad to have him.
This is a one-time gig. When it's done, we're done.
At least they managed to sort of remake Cloud's personality as it was before. He still doesn't care about anything about this.
Looks are what people notice first. I'd say you're not even reading the same book.
Enough. We're done here.
Or even the same...
Give it a rest.
Come on, nobody do something this crazy just for money. They may not think you're a true believer, but you know what I think?
Not interested.
What? Wedge.
You better be worth the money, Merc. Every last gil.
I have a very torn opinion about the fact that they actually decided to give Barrett such a stereotypical accent.
Get him, boy!
I mean, it kind of fits his personality. Then again, it just serves the idea of perpetuating certain stereotypes.
Hey!
Looks like you're next. That's that. Got it?
it's interesting to see that you can actually see the materia directly in the weapon, so you kind of know what's going on there, like what magic you have.
Huh, not so fast. We've got company.
Job's a job. Not bad. No holding back. It's over. That it?
There's definitely more random items than in the original game. Oh, okay, I think, yeah, now we're back in front of the original reactor. And it looks a lot more impressive than in the original game.
I'll secure our escape route, okay? You go on and catch up with the others.
Soldiers may attack on command, but I hear they make good guard dogs too. Bet you've seen a few reactors. So how do we get to the bridge above Mako storage? Ain't holding out on me, are you? Stamp scared to bite the hand that fed him? Or is he a loyal little doggy? Have it your way, Mutt. We can do this with you, or we can do this without you.
Different reactor, different layout. Depends when it was built. Never seen one like this, but I'll manage.
Yeah, it's super weird. It's like they gave him this stereotypical AAVE voice, and I mean, like I said, it fits his character. But then again, I mean, you could definitely assume that he is a person of color. But then again, what's the point of putting that voice on him? You could have just given him like a super deep voice that would have been very fitting as well. But no, they just went with that stereotype again, and I'm very conflicted how I feel about this.
Don't you worry. Biggs will have the door open soon.
In 3, 2... Damn, I'm good.
Who's there? Door! Whoa, wait! It's over!
That's my line.
I mean, yeah, Japanese media totally does that. I can understand that. It's just, why do they also have to force that on other cultures? I mean, they also had to make a decision about the the American voice cast. I'm not sure. Maybe there's also a German voice cast or whatever again. And it's just weird how they just keep pushing that these notions of stereotypes across cultural and linguistic boundaries.
He's alone. We can take him. Make it rain.
You've got this. It's over.
I think Final Fantasy IX, if any one of you has played it here, is a very interesting take on that whole thing about representing certain stereotypes and certain dialects. Final Fantasy IX, for instance, had a lot of great care taken into translation. For instance, in the German version of Final Fantasy IX, there's this band of thieves, and in the German version, all of them receive different dialects, and it's quite interesting to see how they sort of try to diversify these characters. And when you compare it to the American version, it's just thieves that speak some sort of reduced version of English as opposed to some sort of diversification. So I think it also plays a lot into both company decisions done and also the decisions that get made during localization of the game. But I think beyond Final Fantasy IX, at least the early games had a very bad history of poorly translated games.
It's a good thing I know someone who can get us the passcodes. Pity no one else at command will talk to us, but what can you do? And we're good.
Careful in there.
And speaking of lack of awareness, I remember when I first played Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation 1, I was never really sure what gender Jessie would actually be because you couldn't really tell with the clunky graphics.
So, you know Tifa, right? It's not really my business, but are you guys close?
Cloud's memory is essentially broken, and he has some sort of identity crisis going on because he doesn't know which of his memories are real and which are not. And that's the Shinra president and one of the famous German philosophers.
We are currently investigating whether they belong to the same group that made the attempt on your life.
It's interesting to see how they made the decision to actually show that the company already knows what's going on.
This pump's sole purpose is to drain the planet dry. While you sleep, while you eat, while you shit, it's here sucking up Mako. It doesn't rest, and it doesn't care. You do realize what Mako is, don't you? Mako is the lifeblood of our world. The planet bleeds green like you and me bleed red. The hell you think's gonna happen when it's all gone, huh? Answer me! You gonna stand there and pretend you can't hear the planet crying out in pain? I know you can!
You really hear that?
Damn straight I do.
Get help.
Say that again.
Does this qualify as
I'd worry less
overacting?
about the planet and more about the next 5 seconds. Save the screaming for later.
Our lives are on the line now. You listening, Merc? One false move, and that happens.
Well, so much for having Cloud do all the fighting. There are some places a sword just can't reach. Just bear with him for me, would you?
Yeah.
Should have asked for more money.
Gonna throw your sword at him? Let the man with the gun go to work. These tin cans ain't got nothing on me.
At least I think they did a pretty good job at recreating the original enemies from the game, because these look very similar. It's just they're fitted more well into the environment.
Now for the real show. Hurry up. Still. Ooh, gotta love it. Ah! You got this. Do your job, Merc.
Shut up and move over. You got that? No time to celebrate.
Sure there is.
It's actually pretty interesting to see just how huge this reactor actually is. It's more than just a few screens, and it really shows now that you have like 3D. It's kind of weird why you have to choose between characters. I mean, you might as well just instead just give battle commands to them and tell them to attack like enemies that your sword can reach. And here it's like you sometimes actively have to switch to actually get the job done.
Look what we have here.
A laser security system. Great.
Those things will hurt more than your pride if you're careless. They'll cut you down to size and then some. But I'm guessing you've done this kind of thing before.
Yeah. Figure out the timing of the lasers. Then, make a move when they cycle off.
Exactly. I'll go first. Nothing like a little danger to get the blood pumping.
Hey!
Just keep those baby blues of yours on me.
I don't really get why they had to add this section here, because it definitely wasn't there in the first game. If it's just a tutorial to teach you to run faster, it's kind of stupid and doesn't really do anything. It kind of makes it feel like it's just some sort of padding.
Not too shabby. You're doing good, soldier. Okay, let's see what's up next.
Yeah, it really feels like that's, hey, there's hazards in this game. I mean, essentially this first part still is a tutorial, so it kind of makes sense that they have to put in sections to teach you the game mechanics, but it doesn't really do... Oh. It doesn't really do anything to me. It's just... I'm sure there would have been better options. But at least I get constant feedbacks from the NPCs telling me that I either did a good job or not. I also like how far you can actually shoot like these packages with your sword. Proper physics there.
And we're almost at our objective. Look. They don't call those things sweepers for nothing. They can wipe out a whole squad in seconds.
Not if you wipe the floor with them first.
So in the original game this was actually just a normal enemy, and here they decided to turn it into some sort of mini-boss. Probably makes sense to make the bigger enemies just more dreadful.
That hunk of junk is a heavy weapons platform. If we rush in, we die.
Is that right?
We need to hit it with magic. That should give us an opening. No escape.
Okay, so this is just another tutorial on how to take care of bigger enemies.
Now's our chance. Go.
Don't need to tell me twice. I'm gonna enjoy this. Gotta love it.
Is much more impressive than the original dying animation of these enemies.
First class doesn't go into the 20s.
The hell you talking about? I mean your age, not your goddamn rank. Though for all I know, a soldier's rank could be the same as his age. Guess that make you a 1-year-old, huh? Live and learn.
I think
That's
this
our target,
passage
the reactor
of
core. Gotta set
getting
the
back
bomb
to
at
this
the
part
bar.
took us about as long as finishing the boss in the original.
Let's get down there.
God damn. I can practically taste tobacco in here. Hurry it up.
So those of you who have watched since the beginning of the stream, do you feel like you can recognize this from the original game? Do you feel like this is an improvement? like in terms of just padding the aesthetics and things like that.
Scared, huh?
More like excited. I've been dreaming about this for years.
Heads up, boys. The end's in sight. And leave the rest in your capable hands. Good luck. Not that way. Down the ladder, dummy.
And here, compared to the original game, you can actually see what's going on. Like sort of how the planet is actually sort of sucking out the life form, the life force from the planet. So it definitely is much more impressive in my opinion compared to what the original game was capable of presenting.
Run while you can. Enough. Don't overdo it.
All right, watch and learn.
This is really just stupid, like trying to change a character just to get rid of some enemies that are out of distance.
You think if we fell in, we sink right down to the bottom? To the planet's core?
No. The pump would suck us back up.
How comforting.
I'm waiting. That's that.
How'd you like that? I could have done that on my own.
Sure you could.
Alright, that's the boss fight area, I think. Please bear with me a second, I'll be back right away. Alright. I remember when this PlayStation game called Dreams came out, someone actually tried remaking Final Fantasy sort of in this more action-based fashion. So if you have that game, I believe there actually exists a version that is pre-remake that pretty much tries to recreate just this feeling of this game. It's pretty interesting because it's very close to what the remake now does. You can't even use items out of the battle. That's interesting. Do I have any healing spells? Oh yes, I do. I can't use them. That's strange. Didn't know that.
All right, let's see if little Stamp really can bite the hand that feeds. Go on, do the honors. Prove to me you're the man Tifa says you are. That you're one of us.
Never said I was. I'm just here for the paycheck.
Then do the damn job!
Now this is definitely more fleshed out than the
What's wrong?
original version of what happened in the reactor.
I'm fine. What about the timer?
Your call, Merc.
Okay, I believe in the original we had like 10 minutes left.
Pretty
I think
cocky, ain't
20
you?
should work just fine.
You double-crossing!
Heads up!
What in the hell? Hey, how the hell do we fight this thing?
It's got reinforced armor plated, but the internals can be overloaded. Lightning magic.
No other option, huh?
So gotta use lightning magic. I think in the original game actually Cloud had lightning magic. Here I don't seem to have any of that.
Gotta heal up.
Yes, Spirit got thunder.
Hell yeah! You see the damage that did?
Keep it up.
Okay, now that's new. That didn't happen before.
The hell is that?
A barrier? Never seen this defense system before.
Also the rockets are new.
So what's your
So they're definitely using the environment again to sort of reinforce the
bingo? Focus on that core.
impact of this fight.
Now he remembers. Don't keep me waiting in suspense next time.
That didn't work either.
It's my time to shine.
Or go down in flames. Keep it together. Taking over.
Oh, he's got a protection system. Okay, I didn't realize that. Okay, so I think that's what happens when the tail is raised
Funny way to ask.
and you attack him during that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. At least I've got items to use if I want to heal. I mean, then also having the options to give commands to other characters helps, but it still feels very limited. I think he's got still got a protective shield on, doesn't he?
Hang back. All good.
Yeah, he's still got a protective shield on.
Ain't done yet.
Focus and find a way.
I'm really just waiting for an opportunity to use the limit break to see how it looks like in comparison, we don't seem to get any chance.
Now, hit it
Oh,
hard and
nice.
fast.
Oh, you're in for it now!
Just shoot.
That looked much better than the original, obviously.
Watch the tail. You don't want to be hit by that laser.
Huh? So, what do we do?
Don't get hit. Take cover behind that debris.
Oh, okay, that's an interesting take on the original mechanic. Rather than not attacking him, you just have to protect yourself.
Now, go. Gotta memorize this.
What patterns?
Find an opening. Heads up! Tail laser!
I see it!
Then take cover already! Strike now, before it fires again.
That's a good idea. Oh, hell! What's it doing now?
An auto repair unit. Damn it! We gotta take it out quick or we're screwed.
Oh, I am way ahead of you, Murph.
Gotta time our attacks just right. Hold out until you spot an opening.
I don't even see any auto repair unit.
It's not gonna go down easy. Focus!
You focus, soldier boy. You ain't gotta worry about me missing my shot. Shit, the bomb!
20 minutes until detonation.
Huh, you hear that? Damn thing showed you how it's done.
Come on, we've gotta move.
Where'd you be coming all
Okay, so in the original, I actually felt like I knew what I had to do. It was like, if the tail is raised, you just don't attack, and here it was just like, at least I felt like it was too many visuals to actually make the proper decisions of what I have to do when, and just whacking it seemed to do the job anyway. So I don't know if this was more tactical than the original one or not.
Concentrate.
And the fact that you now don't have any
That's that.
randomized battles actually really helps, because you know when there will be a battle and when not. Whereas suppose in the original one you just started running and you never really know how much time those battles will take up. And this actually also happens in the original one, it's just not as impressive.
You okay?
Yeah, it really feels like there is not a lot going on. It might also have to do with the difficulty mode I chose, which is just classic, which is probably not too difficult.
Come this way. This route should lead us straight to Baron. Probably.
Okay, this is actually a little different. I think in the original you just help Jesse to move again, and then you just take the same route. And here, it seems like at least a little bit more interaction between these two characters.
Don't look back. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
And also more chests.
We're running out of time.
Shut up and climb. You're not helping.
Sorry, it keeps me focused. I'll freak out if I don't talk.
Have it your way.
So apparently we're running out of time, but we still got like 17 minutes to leave. I feel like this sequence of separating the two groups actually puts so much more pressure on the scene of where you try to escape the reactor.
Don't worry, I'll be fine. I've got Soldier Boy with me.
X, Soldier Boy.
They're here! Take them down! We don't have time for this shit! The clock's ticking!
Cool it. 5 seconds is all we need.
Enough. Let's go. The others are waiting.
That definitely was more than 5 seconds.
Come on. Burn. Let's do this.
And this really is just button mashing. I don't feel like I'm trying to rely on any tactics of staggering them, and it still worked. Yeah, it will probably be more important on like bigger bosses, or for instance like endgame enemies. He's just sort of teaching you that staggering is a game mechanic that you might have to rely on at some point. Oh, I just remembered, I believe for this remake they actually hired Nobuo Uematsu again, so the original composer of this game, who I believe left making music for Final Fantasy after Final Fantasy X. Now he's back at it again and sort of remade the original soundtrack, which is quite interesting to get that person back on the game to make this closer to the original as well, because the composer that started doing music for Final Fantasy from Final Fantasy I think 11 or 12 onwards had a completely different style of making music, and you really notice that when you play the games. Okay, no, that was funny. That's the original victory fanfare of Final Fantasy VII that plays every time you finish a battle.
More like we'll both be done. Alright, don't overdo it. You're done. It's on you.
Is he just running around? Otherwise I tell him to attack these things?
Was never in doubt.
Well, that timing was very accurate, but anyway.
Sir. Come on!
This really shows just how little Cloud is actually engaged in this whole thing of saving the planet.
Doors open. We don't have a lot of time.
Can you walk?
If I couldn't, believe me, you'd be the first to know.
I'll take that as a yes.
Okay, that was pretty cool. All right, come on.
So basically, Midgard is separated into sectors, and every sector has a reactor connected to them. And if one of them blows up, basically that whole district goes black.
Looks like we made it. And with nothing but a few scratches to show. Think you might have overdone it?
I followed the instructions to the letter. Maybe it triggered a reaction with the Mako?
Well, let's hope the city's still in one piece.
But the planet's what matters, right? I mean, This must have helped some.
After all that, it had better have. Anyway, let's get going. We in Sector 8?
That'd be just down there.
All right then, lead the way.
You got it. Huh. Watch out for live wires. They're everywhere.
Ugh. The air
Okay,
in here
usually
reeks.
there's
Can't wait to
interesting
get out in
things
the
when you
open.
just turn back, but yeah. Not on this occasion.
Man, what is that? I've never smelled anything so foul. Oh, it's me. Gotta do something about that. And soon.
I felt that one in my guts.
They just keep on coming.
We need to get out of this place.
Was it the Mako density? The primary explosive? The blasting agent?
Hey, we can figure that out later.
I'm running on empty here.
I really feel like these tiny sections where you don't have much to do really serve like trying to make the side characters much more round because they actually get a voice. Which is something that just didn't happen in the original
How much farther
game.
do we have to go?
Not far. That's about as good a place as any.
Stand back then. I'll set the bomb.
Can't wait to see you, Marlene.
Can't wait to take a hot shower.
She's good to go. Fire in the hole!
You sure told those doors.
Let that be a lesson to anything that gets in my way.
Oh, is it actually coming to PC? I didn't know that. I thought this was going to stay a PlayStation exclusive.
Attention all citizens. Attention all citizens. This is an alert from the Shinra Emergency Operations Center. Unidentified intruders have detonated a bomb inside Mako Reactor 1. Multiple explosions have been confirmed, as well as ongoing fire.
Right, yeah, they did.
Disaster warning has been issued in sectors
Like
1 and
every time like a PlayStation exclusive comes to PC, I'm always worried about what the modders will do to the game.
therefore, all residents
No. No way.
This couldn't have been
I'm
us.
just sort of then waiting for the mod that replaces Cloud with SpongeBob or something like that.
Merc's right. It ain't pretty, but we can't stop now. This was just the first reactor, and the planet won't be safe till we get the rest.
Yeah. We always knew this was gonna get messy.
And this is only the beginning.
Y'all gotta look at the bigger picture here. Nothing worth fighting for was ever won without sacrifice. Though you may not be crying out, I know you're in pain, just like the planet. But it's okay, cause I'm here for you, to help take the load off your shoulders. Your fears, your worries, your concerns, and yes, your feelings. Whatever your problem, I got you.
So, what's our next move, boss?
That's easy enough. We get our asses home.
And like in respect to mods, I still remember when when I saw the first mods of Resident Evil 2 Remake, when they started replacing Mr. X with weird things, like for instance Thomas the Tank Engine, and it's just so weird what people come up with in modifying games.
We'll split up and shoot for the last train home. Regroup in the freight car. Got it?
Later then.
Hey, I'd like my money now.
You can have it once we're back at base.
This outlook is very interesting. Like in the original, you just couldn't see the impact that your actions had on the actual city. It was just like you could sort of see coming out of this burning entrance and see some debris all over the place. But you never really got to the point where you see that the city has been damaged as well, that there may have been people injured, things are burning. You just didn't see that, so it's quite interesting to see that the actions that you just did actually have a negative impact on the city as well, because you can obviously see people suffering, like innocent people suffering. And that's just something you probably couldn't properly represent in the actual game.
Hugo. I don't need to tell you what this is, right?
Of course not. It's healing material.
You can have it for saving my life.
Just doing my job. Nothing more.
Yeah. Fact is, I'm lucky you were there.
Survival can be a matter of luck or skill. And you can't rely on luck.
One thing I don't really understand is why Jesse is trying to make a move on Cloud, because this was something that wasn't really tangible in the original. So I don't know why they changed her character in such a way here. This way that they did the tutorial is very interesting, because this is very close to how the original tutorial you get a little bit later on is. It's also the way that the menu is set up. This is actually very close to what the original game did.
Okay, I was only trying to help. Oh, before I forget, here's a little something extra for being so brave. That really was the ride of a lifetime. Well, see you on the train.
So, can I just roam now?
We're not going to get home, are we? What if the trains have stopped? What if the plane falls?
No, I'm still blocked off and there isn't much to do. Yes, it's really interesting, and I'm sort of wondering whether it was at least in the original intended for her to be androgynous, or whether this was just you know, a limitation of storytelling, a limitation of graphics, and here she clearly is portrayed as female and someone who is directly attracted to Cloud, so this really is quite a change in how they're portraying a character. And this scenery is actually quite interesting. I think in the original you basically just walk from the reactor directly to the train station, and here you actually have to move through the streets where all the affected peoples are. You hear the sirens, you hear the people talking, so this is much more immersive and is much more telling of the fact that what you're actually doing is not necessarily just a good thing, it's also a bad thing for the people that just want to live their lives in the city, because it obviously also affects them.
Cloud! Up here! Look up! I said look up! Careful
Where?
up
Oh,
here.
there.
This could
There you
collapse
are.
at any moment. If you want up, you'll have to use those stairs.
What? Why?
Are you hurt? Don't worry. We'll get you looked at soon enough.
This is kind of awful, because you just walk past here and essentially this is your doing.
Look at all this debris.
Station's intact.
And this is something that definitely did not happen in the original. The original game did not introduce Sephiroth this early, and also not in this fashion. And that's really, I think this might be one of the turning points where the original storytelling really deviates from the remake. Even though on a visual level this is kind of comparable.
He couldn't be. But then...
Oh, it's been ages since I've seen the movie. This kind of scene reminds me of when you're actually in what's it called, Niflheim. There's also this scene where you're in the fire and you're following Sephiroth around, and this actually reminds me of that. And I'm not sure if they're trying to squeeze in some content from the later sections on an aesthetic level, or if this is some sort of different intention.
The hell? Wait. You're not real. You're dead.
I am.
I killed you with my own...
Oh, you need not remind me. It was the crowning moment of our time together. But that was then, and this is now. I have a favor to ask. Our beloved planet is dying. Slowly, silently, painfully. Can you bear to see the planet suffer? Cloud. Were the planet to die, so many things will be lost. Your hometown, oh, so bright. The sound of her voice, pleading from despair. The shiver of her flesh.
This, yeah, if you know the original game, this is super weird when you just see all these memories of Cloud mixing together, and you don't really know what's going on right now.
And I would be loath to live in such a world, which is why I must ask you this one favor. Don't worry, it's a simple thing. Run, Cloud. Run away. You have to leave. You have to live.
You bastard!
Good, Cloud. Very good. Hold on to that hatred.
I'm seeing things. Fumes from all the Mako, maybe. All right. You got this.
It's no use. This place got hit too?
So this section kind of already extended the walk towards the train station from, I don't know, 2 minutes to probably 10 or 15 minutes.
I can't take
Please leave your residences at once. I repeat. This is an alert from the Shinra Emergency Operations Center. An evacuation order has been issued to the occupants of buildings in the vicinity of the Sector 8 Expressway. You are advised to vacate the area immediately. The explosions at the reactor have caused numerous ongoing fires. Many homes are at risk. It is not safe to remain.
Okay, my controller just disconnected, sorry.
I repeat. This is an alert from the Shinra Emergency Operations Center. An evacuation order has been issued to the occupants of buildings in the vicinity of the Sector 8 Expressway. You are advised to vacate the area immediately. The explosions at the reactor have caused numerous ongoing fires. Many homes are at risk. It is not safe to remain indoors. Please leave your residences at once.
And here you can actually see what you've just done,
This is an alert from the Shinra
which is quite
Emergency
interesting.
Operations Center. An evacuation order has been issued to the occupants
Man,
of buildings in the
what a
vicinity of
mess.
the Sector 8 Expressway.
I'm so scared.
You are advised to vacate the area immediately. The explosions at the reactor have caused numerous ongoing fires. Many homes are at risk.
I don't really understand why I have to take such a massive detour just to get to the point where I originally was supposed to go.
Good thing I stayed put.
This won't phase Shinra at all.
Okay, I can definitely see Aerith in the background, so that's where I have to go.
Don't let the intruder escape.
Okay, I can't go there. This cutscene is very different from the original. Normally Sephiroth doesn't come up. Basically you just talk to Aerith and I believe she gives you a flower or something, and then you just go on your way.
Are you okay? Hey, are you okay?
I'm fine.
Here, this is for you.
Huh? A flower?
That's right. It's a gift. You know, for scaring those things away.
What things?
Never mind. Think of it as a memento.
Just my luck.
I heard that, you know.
How much?
Well, that depends on the customer. In your case... it's on the house.
Huh?
Lovers used to give these when they were reunited.
I wonder if this is sort of a reference to the original game, because essentially what you're doing here is reuniting in a way in a new game.
Wait, you think someone's out to get you? Is that what you're all worked up about? Relax. No one's going to attack you. I promise.
Hey, a Mako reactor just blew. You shouldn't be out here trying to sell...
Help me!
And now that is completely new. Yes, it's definitely the Dementors. I think quite a few people have already pointed that kind of thing out. But I believe it's also connected to the director that is now taking care of the game. It's the one that's normally doing Kingdom Hearts. And I believe he also has this thing about fate and such things. And apparently it sort of makes sense. It just very much strongly deviates from the original game.
That's that. Nothing to it.
Oh, I can actually on here, that's nice. I believe these things that you just saw,
Let's go.
they're kind of like spirits that try to make sure things go the way that fate wants them to go. And it's kind of weird because it would kind of signify that technically the story could go a different way from here, but these creatures are there to make sure it doesn't. And it feels very confusing because I just have a basic understanding of what's going on here. Yes, the action combat route is much more fluid, but then again there are still some issues. Switching characters and things like that feels very clunky, but overall the fluidity of fighting feels much better. That's very much true. I actually pointed that out earlier. It might just have to do with the fact that the PlayStation 1 just had very limited capability of what they could do in terms of like live action combat, so it totally makes sense for games on better consoles to actually just go that route, because the console can handle it.
Just give it up! Don't run!
Going in.
Target sighted! I repeat, target sighted! Shock troopers, prep for immediate deployment! Troopers on standby!
Oh my god.
You are clearly engaged! Be advised, target has been stationed!
You're mine.
Now this is very different from the original escape scene, where you basically just get surrounded by a lot of soldiers, and here it really feels like a chasing scene. So this puts a lot more pressure on you than in the original. It just feels like there's a million of ways I could go, because the area all of a sudden is so large. Normally I'm just used to walking one straight route.
Use the rooftops, sweetie. But the rooftops look clear.
Over there! Open fire! Shoot to kill!
Close call.
Be advised, target approaching residential area! Steel Hall action immediately!
This, yeah, I mean, this is actually very interesting. This puts so much more pressure on the actual escape scene that you're supposed to be thrown in.
Don't underestimate him!
Get ready. Nothing to it.
I see him!
Confirm! Target has entered residential area!
No. That's that.
All lockdown is in effect! All units!
This is an alert from the Shinra Emergency Operations Center. The suspect is reactor one
Stand by for the target! You're
I don't even know where I have to go.
It's never in doubt.
Not venture outside for anything. An announcement will be made when the lockdown has been lifted.
Target spotted! Moving to intercept!
That's that. Let's go.
Get the bastard! Can't take me! Back off!
Need a light. Let's do this.
You're gonna fry!
Okay, I think this, yeah, this is the original bridge that you actually end up when you're running away from the soldiers, and that's sort of the point where you jump on the train. I'm not sure how this is going to work out in this one.
Let's do this. Calling fire.
Yes, that's very true. I mean, this still probably is very linear. It's just when you've played the original game, it's like you just follow this one simple path, and here's always these tiny little back streets where you can actually go in. Even if it's just to open some sort of chest, it makes things look much more large. That's very interesting. I mean, I don't even know where the actual cutscene is supposed to take place. I mean, to me, this just looks like the actual place where we jump on the train, but this is probably just not it. Okay, now that should be it now.
Into the life push.
I'm gonna enjoy this.
Yes, that's how the original scene sort of played out. You just get surrounded by soldiers, and you just keep fighting them until the pressure gets so much that you actually have to jump on the train. Oh, I could still block that. I don't like that.
No escape. Need a light. You're done.
Yes, that's very true. This is probably just a super scripted fight. It's just, especially the first time you play it, you just don't know how much pressure there actually is on you.
Guess Cloud won't be joining us after all.
No need to assume the worst. I'm sure he's fine. You saw him in action, didn't you? Guy's a soldier. Goddamn one-man army.
You think he's a keeper?
And that scene actually is very much close to the original again, which is really beautiful to look at.
What the hell you been up to, huh?
Giving public security the runaround. That's what. Had to draw them away from the station somehow.
Nicely done.
Well, can't argue with results, huh? What?
Wait. Got a question for you all.
What?
Ever been attacked by an invisible enemy?
What?
Wearing robes. Came and went like the wind.
Thought they were invisible.
They were, at first. Only saw them after she grabbed me.
It seems like Cloud is confused.
More like a panic-induced hallucination.
Never mind. Forget I said anything.
Suit yourself. Come on, let's move up.
A lot of people here.
And in the freight car, too.
Because of the evacuation order, maybe?
This train
Lucky us.
from
We've got a crowd to
Station
hide.
is bound for
Head for the front of the
Sector
train and
7
hold
Undercity.
there.
Due to an explosion at Mako Reactor 1, an emergency schedule is now in effect. Your understanding and cooperation is appreciated.
Okay, I think this might be a good point to wrap up this game lab. I'll probably still keep streaming a little bit afterwards, but I'd just like to wrap up the original game lab. At least for me, someone who has played the original game for way too many times and for way too long. At least this section that I've played still feels very close to the original, with a few exceptions. There were a few sections where they simply made things look more beautiful, or just sort of tried to put more aesthetic value on the things that were in the original. But for instance, as we've seen with the scene with Aerith, with the Dementors, or whatever you want to call them, that's something where you can really see that there is some sort of deviation going on from the original. So this really makes me wonder whether a game such as this truly deserves the title of a remake, because clearly there is some sort of deviation going on, and I'm not really sure whether I want to call this a remake. And I think this has also been made clear in quite a few interviews, not just with this game, but also with other games that the producers of games that sort of try to remake games, as they call it, actually speak more of what's it called? I think reimagining. So it's sort of this idea of trying to stay close to the original, but then again you end up not making the original again. And at least for someone who has played this game for such a long time, it feels kind of weird. I'm very torn about this. I'm also torn about the fact that this game just covers such a short section of the original game, and given how long it took Final Fantasy VII Remake to come out, it leaves a very weird feeling in my stomach that they will just either just keep this game going for a very long time, for maybe a decade or whatever, and just keep milking as much money out of it as possible, or the other option would be that they just end up shortening the game on a story level and come up with weird explanations for why the story is shorter now. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, and I'm not sure how I feel about this being some sort of community service to a lot of people who actually loved playing this game because they wanted to see it in proper 3D, and now nobody really knows what they're expecting of this. So So maybe as some sort of concluding thoughts, what are your thoughts about this game? Maybe if you've played it, how do you feel about this in comparison to the original, or maybe also about other remakes or remasters or whatever you want to call them? How do you feel about this being a thing? Similar to when books are used as sources for movies, they often deviate from original sources. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's just done bad. I'm just thinking about things like, I don't know, Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings maybe. I never really read any of the books and I only watched the movies, so for me this is kind of like a very weird experience. But I remember seeing a lot of fan community responses to these things that that directors maybe just not stick very much closely to the original, and usually people were very disappointed in these things. And I think with a case of Harry Potter, if I remember this correctly, there were also quite a lot of people complaining, for instance, about J.K. Rowling, how she just after writing the books came up with a lot of more backstory about the character that just wasn't in there on a canonical level, and people were had very split opinions about whether this was a good thing or whether this was a bad thing, or whether this maybe was just another way for her to try and make money out of these things. So it's super weird to see how people translate whether it's a book, a movie, or a game from one medium to another. Yes, that's very true. It's very hard to balance between the people that have been there from the beginning and have some sort of expectation on how it should be maybe how it should be translated into the next game, and maybe the people that just joined like midway. And I really think it's hard to strike a balance, at least for me, from a perspective from someone who has been there from the beginning. I don't really mind mechanical changes such as changing the battle system and things like that. On a story level, I'm a little bit torn, and I don't know why they did that and how this will turn out, and this makes me very reluctant to actually consider buying future games, because I'd rather first look at reviews and look at how people try to make sense of the game before I spend money on something that might just disappoint me in the end, especially because games such as these just cost 70 euros. So maybe as a Final Fantasy fanboy, maybe it's just very hard for me to actually try to find a good way to balance between the two extremes. Yes, that's another thing. That's like if you're very infatuated with the game, it's like you're probably more likely to buy the game anyway, even if it's bad. I mean, that's probably the one reason why there's this group of people who keeps buying the newest iPhone every 1 or 2 years, simply because they're sort of used to buying Apple phones, and they just like Apple for being Apple, even if there's no benefit to this, and even if it just costs I don't know, thousands of dollars to buy yourself a new one. And yeah, there's also these kinds of people that just will do it irrespective of whether it's good or bad. And I'm also wondering, given that Final Fantasy VII was the first game to actually employ 3D graphics, how they would actually go about translating, like, for instance, the world map sections into a proper PlayStation 4 game. I believe that's very difficult to do. And it's the question of whether they sort of want to stick with linearity, or whether they want to make it sort of more open world, and that sort of raises the question of how much more time will it add to the production of the game. Because if you think about once you leave Midgard, there's just quite a few open world sections, and the world is huge, and I'm not sure how easily that will translate into a PlayStation 4 game. So if there are no more comments or questions or whatever, I'd just like to remind every one of you who is not a part of the AAU or GS in general. I'm a tutor at the Alpen-Adria University in Klagenfurt, and I'm a student of Game Studies and Engineering. And we do these game labs online now because we usually do them physically for the students that are around here, but we're trying to do this for everyone around. And this game lab sort of showcases just what we actually do in our game labs. It showcases what we do in our master's degree. And if you're interested in that, you can always get in contact with us. And we're still open for applications, so there's also a chance to join us and also do this offline at some point. So we're always looking forward to new people interested in game studies and engineering. Yes, if you never played the original, you usually have a very different take on it, and I pointed this out earlier. It's like I think it depends on when you picked up the game. For me, it was like I picked it up in 1997, so when it came out, and I was like 10 years old, so that probably just adds up to my nostalgic value. And somebody who just starts playing it like later on in their life, they might just have a very different opinion on that because they're in a different position in their life. So in that sense, thank you very much from us as tutors at the Alpen-Adria University. Thank you from the program of Game Studies and Engineering. And if you want to stick around, I'll be back in about 3 to 4 minutes, and I'll probably just keep playing this for a few more hours.